Hi everyone, this is Rohit from Life and Mastery, and I'm excited to have Greg Alexander, who's a founder of Collective 54, which is a first mastermind community for thriving professional services firms. He's also author of the best-selling book, The Boutique: How to Start, Scale, and Sell a Professional Services Firm. And a big thanks to Bruce Palangi from Parevada for the introduction. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, you've been a founder before, but I want to talk about your book. What inspired you to write The Boutique?
Yeah, so really the answer was COVID. So I had exited my management consulting firm at the end of 2017. And then in 18 and 19, my wife and I, recharged the batteries, traveled around the world, et cetera. And then in 2020, we launched Collective 54. And of course, COVID hit in March of that year. And everybody was sitting around, watching too much television and eating too much DoorDash. And I was getting calls from people who had fresh time in their hands, asking me to tell them my story about what I did with my firm, asking me to help them do what I did at their firm. And I just thought the most time efficient way to contribute the most to those people was to write a book. So that was the genesis of it.
Interesting. And can you explain about what's the difference between starting, scaling, and then selling a boutique firm?
Yeah. So our framework is based on the life cycle. We believe that from cradle to grave of a professional services firm, which is industry classification code 54. So think of consulting firms, architects, lawyers, accountants, IT service providers, people that market, sell, and deliver expertise for a living. The life cycle of those firms is about 15 years, cradle to grave. There's three stages: grow, scale, and exit. And there's about 5 years in each one of those stages. So in the first stage, the growth stage, or the book refers to it as the start stage, you've launched your firm. You're figuring out a bunch of things, such as which problems are you going to solve for clients, what service offerings you're going to bring to market, who's your ideal client profile, what will your monetization strategy be? You're going to sell time, you're going to do retainers or fixed bids or value-based pricing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a period of great experimentation. You graduate from that phase when you realize that you've got a real firm, that it's not a lifestyle firm, meaning
Yeah.
it's not just a group of smart people doing something, but it's something that can scale, and become a substantial firm. And that's the second 5 years. And that often involves things like tech enabling your service, using a global talent base, productizing your service, maybe serving a larger and more sophisticated client base, building a talent supply chain so that you continue your expertise, et cetera, et cetera. And in many ways, it's almost as if you're birthing a new firm, because the playbook you run in the scaling stage is very different than the playbook you run in the growth stage. And then the last stage, which is the exit stage, is so now you're 10 years in, and you may want to sell your firm. Now, selling a capital light people business is a very tricky thing to do. And who might the buyer be? What might they be willing to pay? On what terms? Like many times there's an earnout. How should that earnout be accounted for? Should you sell to a private equity firm? Should you sell to a strategic? Should you run a process with a investment banker or not? Like, it's a whole entirely different set of things. So the book is structured that way. It's three different things that you need to do, three different playbooks, if you will. And that's what we help our members with.
Got it. And you talked about different monetization strategies. What's been the best monetization strategy when it comes to boutique firms in your view?
Yeah, great question. And I'm going to answer that by telling you what's been the worst. So if you're trading time for money, you're not scalable. And the
Mm.
reason for that is there's only so many billable hours in a day.
Yeah.
And there's usually a limit on what you can charge per hour because you're in a competitive situation. So moving away from that is the key. Now, there's lots of different things you could do there. So, for example, Collective 54, which is our new firm, is a mastermind community. It's a professional services firm, and we charge monthly dues to a community of members. That's a different monetization strategy applicable to a service that is delivered one to many as opposed to one to one. Another way to do it: marketing agencies, which we have a lot of in the community, very often engage in retainers. And retainers, you're not buying time, you're buying access. And what you're
Yeah.
saying is, I want access to a group of experts when I need it. I might not even use it for a month, 2, 3 months, and then I might use it intensely, for another 3 months. So the retainer gives you access. In the legal profession, particularly litigators, it's usually performance based. So I take you on as a client, we issue a complaint. If we get a settlement, I get a piece of the settlement. So there's lots of different ways to do it. But the thing I would leave your listeners is, if you're trading time for money, stop doing that and explore the alternatives.
Got it. And how did your experience at Sales Benchmark Index, influence your insights into writing the book?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that question, please?
Uh, yeah, I was talking about your experience with SBI.
Yeah.
How did that influence into, the insights into your book?
Yeah. Well, directly. I mean, when I wrote the book, it was autobiographical to an
Yeah.
extent. Collective 54 was very young at that point. I think we only had 100 members or so. So much of what I wrote about in that book was how I grew, scaled, and sold my old firm. Now here we are 5 years later, we have a few hundred members, and we've had 42 exits in our community. So it's very different now. In fact, I'm working on the second edition of the book as we speak. And the original framework that I put forward in the book, which is called the boutique framework, based on that life cycle that I mentioned to you, has evolved tremendously. And I'm often quoted for the following statement, which I believe wholeheartedly: this is the golden era of professional services. And the reason for that is that for the longest time, a services firm was very difficult to scale. These days, with technical innovation, artificial intelligence, and others, an individual's productivity can scale like we've never seen before. And that's creating wonderful opportunities to take these lifestyle businesses and turn them into real firms that can generate significant wealth for its owners.
Got it. Interesting. You mentioned about AI, but do you think AI can it's already disrupting industries, but do you think AI will make a lot of service businesses redundant?
Potentially,
Hmm.
if your service is a pair of hands service or a commodity service, which I would define as, a client is giving me a piece of work, even though they could do it in-house, they're giving it to me because they're busy and they have other things to do. So I'm hiring you as my service provider because I need an extra pair of hands. Those firms are in a lot of trouble, because those are commodity work, they're routinized tasks, and those are things ripe for artificial intelligence to replace. The machine can probably do it better, faster, cheaper than the individual. On the other end of the spectrum of that is the intellect firm, where I, the client, am hiring you for a never before seen problem. And I really need the brilliance and the expertise that probably doesn't sit in a machine. Or if it does sit in a machine, I'm not talented enough as the client to know how to prompt the machine to solve the problem. So I'm hiring you for that. And of course, there's things in between those two extremes. So the trick, I should say, or maybe the action item is a better way to say it, is to make sure that if you're a service provider listening to this, you're providing a service that is truly highly differentiated and can't be commoditized through the machine.
Got it. Interesting. And Naval Ravikant from Angel List talked about leverage when it comes to coding, media, capital, and labor. But in your book, you also discuss about the concept of leverage. So how can boutique owners, implement leverage to work less and make more?
Yeah. So leverage in professional services simply is defined as, how many non-partners can a partner keep busy? So what normally happens in professional services, there's the pyramid, and at the top of the pyramid, you have the partners. They're usually responsible for business development. They bring in the work. They're known as rainmakers. And then the work gets delivered by a team, and that team, their billings are tied to that partner. So a leverage ratio, which was popularized by the great David Meister in his famous book called Managing a Professional Services Firm, I might have a 10-to-1 ratio. In other words, I'm the partner and I'm keeping 10 juniors billable. And again, prior to the golden era of professional services, which is what we're in right now, even if you were really, really, really good, you might have a leverage ratio of 20-to-1. Maybe if you're exceptional, it's 50 to 1. These days, through digital technology, you can have a leverage ratio. I mean, we have members in Collective 54. There's one partner, and they're keeping 100 juniors billable. That's a leverage ratio of 100 to 1, which is really, really remarkable. And the reason why that's relevant is because what is normally the case in professional services is the partner sells the work at, let's say, I don't know, $1,000 an hour, and he delivers the work with junior staff at $100 an hour, and
Mm.
therefore he's got a $900 per hour gross margin. So the more leverage you have, the more profitable the firm is.
Got interesting. And I had Sam Jacobs from Pavilion who came on the podcast, and I've seen that a lot of communities have opened up in after COVID because we needed that sort of bonding with other. Uh, but how does Collective 54 differ from other professional networks for business owners?
There's three differences, and I know Sam and I know Pavilion, and I highly recommend it. I think it's a great community.
Yeah.
And I encourage everybody to join as many communities as possible. I'm a YPO member myself. I'm a former EO member. I'm a former Tiger 21 member. I just think learning from peers, which is what a community delivers, is the best form of learning. So I don't think it's a either or. I think it's an and. Collective 54 is different for three things. Number one, we're focusing exclusively on a single industry, the professional services industry. That's the reason why the number 54 is in the name Collective 54. That's the North American Industry Classification Code for professional services. So that's number one. Number two, we're focused on a segment within that industry we call the boutique, which is defined as 25 to 250 billable employees. If you're less than that, you're not a good fit for us because you're a startup and we're really dealing with scalability challenges primarily. And if you're more than 250, you've already scaled and maybe you've already exited and you're on your third or fourth exit. So it's outside of our scope. So we're focused on that segment called the boutique because it's those awkward adolescent years that we're helping people with. And then the third differentiation, what makes Collective 54 unique is we're focused on a single individual within the segment, and that's the owner. And we're teaching the owner how to take an unsellable lifestyle business and turn it into an asset that could be sold and thus create wealth. We're helping them think past the income statement and to the balance sheet, how to create equity value out of their firm.
Got it. And do you see a lot of private equity players getting into this segment and buying these sort of businesses?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, we've been lucky to be involved in 42 exits,
Yeah.
and two-thirds of those have been private equity firms. Private equity loves professional services firms. Why is that? Well, they're very often buying EBITDA.
Mm.
Professional services firms are very inexpensive to run. They throw off a ton of free cash, and private equity firms love that.
Got it. Got it. And what are some of the key indicators that a boutique firm is ready to be sold? Is it, after a certain X number of years, like you mentioned about 10 years, or it could be sold before that as well?
Yeah, so here are the criteria that make a boutique professional services firms uh, sellable. So number one, they're not dependent on the founder. And
Okay.
that is the founder no longer sells work and the founder no longer delivers work. The founder is running the firm. So that's the first one. Investors are not going to buy your firm if there's founder risk. God forbid something happens to the founder and the business falls apart. That's the first one. Second one, there's an element of size. Rules of thumb. Below $3 million in EBITDA, you probably can't sell your firm. Between $3 to $5 million in EBITDA, you can sell it, but it's probably at a discount and on unfavorable terms because it's just too risky. After $5 million in EBITDA, there's a very large pool of potential buyers. And these potential buyers are sophisticated investors and they have access to the capital that's required. So there's an element of size there for sure. The third thing is a diversified client base. Unfortunately, small services firms suffer from client concentration. Their P&L may look good. They might be a firm with $5 million in EBITDA, but half the EBITDA is coming from one client. That's just too risky. So a diversified client base is really important. And then the fourth one is growth. A firm that's growing, let's say below 25%, is not exciting to an investor. Somebody's buying a boutique, which is what we deal with, a smaller firm, because they're buying into the growth story, what that firm might be. So if you're a 50-person firm and you're doing, 5 million in EBITDA, but you're growing, 10, 12, 15%. That's not very attractive. If you're growing at 25, 35, 45%, then that tells an investor you're in a hot sector. There's plenty of demand, et cetera. So those are really, I mean, there's several more than that, but those are four that I would concentrate on.
Got it. And do you focus on boutique firms which are based in the US or can it be remotely based?
Yeah, all of our members are in North America, which includes Canada.
Okay.
We have decided to focus there just because there's 1.5 million of them.
Yeah.
There's a huge market, and there are other communities that do what we do in other parts of the world. And given the nature of our programming, we meet as a community weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annually. Time zones become a real challenge. And much of what we're doing is curating the community and then brokering the community. So, for example, if you were in the community and you said, "Hey, Greg, I'm struggling with XYZ," we probably know through pattern matching a member who's already solved that problem. We want to connect you. And sometimes dealing with language and time zones can make that more difficult than it needs to be. So we're concentrated on North America.
Got it. And, I'm a member of Pavilion, but I've seen that they have really scaled up in the last couple of years. And I've seen that, do you think communities which scale up more than 5 to 10,000 members, they face issues? And would you recommend them to scale to a certain size?
Yeah. So this is where Sam and I differ.
Yeah.
Sam decided to take investment capital a few years
Yeah.
ago with the goal of scaling it. And I did not. I funded this myself. And I'm trying to be the best, not the biggest.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that it's a great member experience if you're one of 10,000. I think it's a much better experience if you're one of 300. Our members tend to enjoy being a bigger fish in a smaller pond. It's tough to make meaningful connections and personal relationships where you could learn from a mentor, if you're one of 10,000, but it's much, much easier if you're one of just a few hundred. So we're not trying to scale. We're trying to be the best at what we do, and we believe small is beautiful.
Got it. So do you cap it at a certain a number of clients?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're capped at 500 right now. We're not quite there, so we do have some openings available. We're going to be capped at 500, and then we'll see. We're keenly focused on the member experience. If the member experience does not degrade at 500, we might expand. An interesting thing has happened to us that I didn't anticipate. I'll put it in the category of a lucky break. Every time a new member joins, the existing members are benefiting from that because this new member is bringing their own expertise, and that expertise is getting deposited into the knowledge base. So it's interesting to see how that's happening. I was assuming at some point you reached the point of diminishing returns there, but that has not happened. I mean, the entrepreneurs and founders, the people that we focus on, are complex creatures. They're very interesting people, and every time a new one joins, we've all benefited from that. So if that continues, then we'll continue to grow. If that does crest, then we'll stop the growth.
Got it. And how do you delight the members? Uh, are there weekly meetings, the chapter meetings? What's the cadence like for you?
Yeah. So here is there's 6 features to our membership. I'll mention these 6 and then I'll talk about the cadence. So feature number 1 is the network itself. So, we have an application process and we're very, very careful who lets in, and we're doing the curation on behalf of the members. That's number 1. Number 2 is content. I mean, we run extensive educational program that many people like. The book you mentioned is one of many, many things. Number 3 is events. We meet virtually every week, twice a week. We
Okay.
meet virtually monthly. We meet in person in the local regions quarterly. And then we have an annual conference every year in the fall in Fort Worth, Texas, where the entire membership meets. So that's events. The 4th thing is data. So we benchmark our members. They submit their operational and financial metrics. So if you're wondering, hey, what should I pay my people, or what should I charge my services, we have valuable information on those and others. Then we have software. So we have a member portal, much what you might think of, a member directory, activities calendar, et cetera. And then what am I missing? And coaching, excuse me. We believe in the buddy system, and we match mentors and proteges. And those relationships change as frequently as once a quarter, or in some cases once a year. It depends on the individual member. So we provide coaching. So those are the 6 features, and that's our meeting cadence.
Correct. And how do you see the future of professional services evolving? Are there any special trends that you see going forward?
Yeah. So I think the world is getting more complicated.
Yeah.
Whenever the world gets more complicated, the needs for expertise goes up.
Mm,
I think the pace of change is causing a surge in need for professional services. I'll give you a story. So imagine you're a big company, let's say you're Coca-Cola, and you have a huge internal marketing department. And all of a sudden, here comes TikTok. And you say, my gosh, right? I need to leverage that channel. And I look internally, and since it's brand new, I don't have anybody. So what do? I go rent it. I go hire a marketing agency that's an expert in TikTok. And then all of a sudden, the Chinese and the Americans get into a fight and nobody wants TikTok anymore. Now what? I don't need them anymore. Well, if I'm just renting them, I can terminate that relationship. And then the next hot thing happens. Maybe it's Chat GPT. And then I can go rent that service. So renting is just so much more flexible and beneficial to the client versus having to build an army of people internally and then worrying about how to retrain everybody when a change hits me out of left field. It's just not very effective. I think the world is becoming gigafied, not just in our personal lives, getting food from DoorDash or renting an Uber or staying in an Airbnb. I think it's being gigafied on how we organize the workforce. And I think this is the reason why it's so wonderful to be in professional services right now.
got it. And do you see the end of jobs? How we see it, like the 9 to 5 job? Do you think a lot of people will get into the world of consulting?
I think it's already happened.
Yeah.
You know, the wonderful thing I love the most about Collective 54 is I have this almost laboratory, and I
Mm,
have all these firms, dozens of them, through all these different disciplines, and I'm seeing how their life is in the life of their employees. And I think the word work-life balance has been replaced by work-life integration.
mm.
And we're living in this world where it's 24/7 and everybody's working remotely. And when we're truly knowledge workers now, and the machines are amplifying the contributions we can make for clients. I think the traditional work model, I don't think it's a question of if it's been blown to bits and been replaced. I think it already has been. And we're now adjusting to that new way.
Got it. And do you have any advice for somebody who just wants to start out in professional service industry?
I do. So first, my advice is to do it. It's an incredibly rewarding and fulfilling career. When clients hire you to solve their big problems, the intellectual stimulation that comes from that, in addition to the monetary reward, is a wonderful thing. And you never get bored because each client is different. Each problem is different. It's just a wonderful thing. Now, practically speaking, I would tell you the biggest mistake that people make when they start, and I'll tell you how to avoid that. They start with their solution
Yeah.
and they're running around with a solution looking for a problem. And that's very, very frustrating. What you should start with is the problem. What is the problem I'm going to solve? And in order to start a firm, a problem has to have 3 criteria. Number one, clients have to be willing to pay to solve it.
Yeah.
We jokingly talk about there's a difference between vitamins and painkillers. You want to be selling painkillers, not vitamins, because when someone's in pain, they're buying. They might not buy the vitamin because it's just discretionary thing and they don't need it. So someone's going to be willing to pay to solve the problem. That's number one. Number two, it has to be pervasive. If there's only 3 people in the world that have that problem, that's not very good. There's got to be a lot of people that are having problem. And then the third one, you have to be able to recognize the problem and get access to the clients that have that problem. And this is often overlooked. A lot of professional services firms don't come from sales and marketing backgrounds. They come from domains where they're experts. Like we were talking about IT services earlier. We have some folks inside the community that are true giants in cybersecurity, and that's their expertise, and they're incredible, but they don't know how to sell it. And just having the expertise isn't enough. You have to be able to sit with a client, help that client understand their problem, show them their solution and why your solution is better than everybody else's. That's a different skill set altogether. So yeah, so my recommendation to those that are thinking about doing this is do it. You'll love it. And number 2, start with the problem, not the solution.
Got it. And I quickly want to do the top 3. What's your favorite business book?
My favorite business book of all time is Think Fast and Slow. by the great Kahneman behavioral finance gentleman. I think decision making is the number one skill we all need to learn, and his book is the best book on decision making I've read.
Got it. We'll put down the show notes. And, if you could go back in time and start with Collective 54, what is the one thing you would have focused on or done things differently?
I diluted my equity too soon. I started it with two other firms, and we split up the equity, 51 me, 49 them. And that was a mistake because all the work was yet to be done. And that probably wasn't a fair equity split. So I would do that over again. I would have awarded equity to employees over time, but it would have been much more measured based on contribution.
Got it. Got it. And do you have any favorite online tools, for example, Gmail, Slack, Zoom?
I'm sorry, one more time.
Do you have any favorite online tools, for example, Gmail, Slack, Zoom?
Favorite online tools. Believe it or not, my favorite online tool is Spotify. I start every morning listening to music. I struggle sometimes living in the future, and I need to get myself into the present. And I find music to be calming, and it grounds me.
Got it. Got it. We'll put down in show notes. And Greg, what's the best way people can reach out to you, know more about Collective 54 and the book, The Boutique?
Yeah, I would give you three things. So if you want the book, go to Amazon and search for The Boutique, How to Start, Scale, and Sell a Professional Services Firm. If you want to follow me personally, I would encourage you to look at my LinkedIn profile and follow me. And then if you're interested in Collective 54, which I hope you are, the website is collective54.com, and you can fill out an application and one of our representatives will get in contact with you.
Got it. We'll put down in the show notes. Greg, thank you so much for taking the time and speaking to us. I really enjoyed my conversation with you.
Thank you for having me.